"Do not open that gate," the stable master warned. But the poor Omega was already listening to what everyone else had missed. The royal warhorse struck the stone floor with one iron-shod hoof, the impact snapping through the courtyard like thunder. Two handlers stumbled backward, another dropped the lead rope, and every soldier near the stall reached for distance at once. Claire Bennett did not move. She stood beside a stack of feed sacks with a wooden bucket pressed against her skirt, her pale fingers tightening around the handle as the black stallion tossed his head behind the barred gate. Vesper, the king's warhorse, was larger than any horse Claire had ever seen, nearly 17 hands of muscle, scars, and restless power. His coat shone dark as wet coal beneath the lanterns, but sweat silvered his neck despite the cold morning air. The men called it rage. Claire heard something else beneath the stamping and hard breaths. "Panic! Back away, girl," stable master Harlan barked. "Unless you want to be carried out." Claire lowered her gaze as servants were expected to do, yet her attention remained on Vesper's ears. They flattened whenever the chain beneath his old battle tack scraped the iron ring. Each metallic sound made the stallion's skin jump along his ribs. Then came the king. Conversation vanished before Claire even saw him. Alpha King Rowan Blackwood crossed the courtyard in a long black coat, his guards behind him, his expression still enough to quiet the entire stable yard. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and pale beneath the winter light, with dark hair swept back from a face carved into severe lines. He stopped 10 feet from the gate. Vesper jerked away from him so sharply that the hinges groaned. Something changed in Rowan's eyes, gone too quickly for anyone to name. Claire saw it anyway. Hurt, buried beneath command. "Clear the stall," Rowan ordered. Harlan bowed and hurried forward with 3 handlers. They tightened ropes, raised padded poles, and spoke in loud, clipped voices. Vesper's breathing worsened. Claire watched the chain scrape again. The stallion recoiled, striking the wall with his shoulder. "You're frightening him," she said. Her voice was not loud, but in the king's silence, it carried. Harlan turned slowly. "What did you say?" Claire's stomach tightened. Omegas in royal service were not hired for opinions. They carried water, scrubbed floors, and disappeared when nobles entered. She should have apologized. Instead, she looked at the raw patch beneath the edge of Vesper's tack. "The metal is hurting him." A soft laugh came from Lady Marin, the chief housekeeper, who had entered behind the king. "The kitchen girl thinks she understands the royal warhorse." "I work in the laundry," Claire said quietly. "Not anymore." Marin's smile sharpened. "You abandoned your assigned corridor," interrupted the king, and questioned his stable master. "Since you are so concerned with horses, you may serve them." She pointed toward the lower stable doors, where muddy water ran between cracked stones. "Take her below. She can clean stalls until she remembers her place." Claire looked once toward Rowan. He said nothing. Harlan took the bucket from her and shoved a broom into her hands. As she was led toward the lower stables, Vesper struck the floor again. This time Claire heard the chain catch, heard the breath tear from him, and knew the punishment had placed her exactly where the truth was waiting. The lower stables sat beneath the eastern wing of the palace, where sunlight reached only in thin gray bands through narrow windows. Claire followed Harlan down a stone ramp slick with rainwater and old straw, carrying the broom in one hand and the empty bucket in the other. The air smelled of hay, leather, damp wood, and the sharp mineral scent of iron. No servants hurried here. No polished carriages waited beneath silk covers. These stalls belonged to the horses considered too old, too nervous, or too difficult for the royal household to display. Harlan stopped beside a cracked wooden door and pointed toward a row of stalls. "Water first, then bedding. You will scrub every trough before supper." His gaze moved over her plain gray dress and worn shoes. "Do not go near the upper stall. Vesper is not some barn pony waiting for kindness." Claire kept her expression still. "Yes, sir." He left without another word, his boots fading up the ramp until the stable settled into the slow rhythm of shifting hooves and quiet breathing. Claire began with the nearest trough. The work was heavier than laundry, but honest. She carried water from a hand pump nearly 40 feet away, filled each trough, replaced damp straw, and checked the worn latches as she moved. The horses watched her with cautious eyes. One chestnut mare leaned toward her sleeve, and Claire paused long enough to let the animal smell her hand before continuing. By late afternoon, Her palms had reddened around the broom handle. The cold had worked through her shoes. Still, every few minutes, a dull metallic scrape traveled through the ceiling from the upper level. Each time, it was followed by the same strained exhale. Claire stopped beneath the beams and listened. The sound came again. Chain. Movement. Pain. She climbed the side steps until she reached the narrow passage behind Vesper's stall. A wall of thick oak separated them, reinforced with iron bands. Through a gap between two boards, she saw part of his dark flank and the edge of the old battle tack Harlan had refused to remove. A curved buckle pressed too close beneath the leather. When Vesper shifted, the metal dragged across a patch of skin already rubbed raw. Claire's throat tightened. She had seen the same restless movement years ago when her father's mare caught a thorn beneath her harness. The animal had not needed stronger hands. She had needed someone patient enough to look. Claire reached for the latch, then remembered Rowan's silence in the courtyard and Marin's satisfaction as she sent her below. One wrong step could cost her more than a place in the laundry. From inside the stall came a low, uneven breath. Claire did not open the door. She lowered herself onto the cold floor outside the wall, far beyond the reach of any hoof, and rested her hands in her lap. "I know," she whispered. Vesper went still. Not calm, not trusting, listening. Claire waited until his breathing slowed by one small measure, then rose and returned to her work. Before darkness fell, she carried a clean bucket to the passage and placed it near the wall. Vesper turned one ear toward the sound of her footsteps. Claire looked again at the hidden buckle and understood that fear was not the most dangerous thing in the stable. It was the certainty of men who had stopped looking. The first night in the lower stables passed without sleep. Every time Claire closed her eyes on the narrow cot beside the feed room, Vesper shifted above her, and the hidden buckle answered with a scrape of metal against leather. Near midnight, the sound changed. It came faster, followed by the hollow thud of a stall wall taking his weight. Claire rose, wrapped a wool shawl around her shoulders, and climbed the side steps with a lantern turned low. She stopped before the oak partition and waited. Vesper struck the floor once, then again. "I am not coming inside," she said softly. His breathing remained high and uneven. Claire set the lantern several feet away so the flame would not startle him, then sat with her back against the opposite wall. "You do not know me. That is fair." The stallion moved behind the boards. Claire heard the chain pull tight. "But I know what it is to have people decide what you are before they look closely." She did not reach through the gap. She did not offer food. Her father had taught her that frightened animals noticed every hidden demand, so she gave Vesper none. Instead, she spoke about ordinary things. The rain tapping the roof. The chestnut mare downstairs that had stolen half an apple from her pocket. The creek behind the cottage where she had grown up, shallow enough in summer to cross barefoot. Her voice stayed low and steady, each sentence separated by enough silence for the stable to breathe around it. At first, Vesper kept circling. Then the pauses between his steps lengthened. His hooves stopped striking the stone with full force. Claire continued until the chain no longer snapped against the ring. When she finally fell silent, one dark eye appeared through the narrow gap between the boards. It watched her without softness, but without panic. Claire lowered her gaze to the floor, offering him the same courtesy she wished people had offered her. After several minutes, the stallion exhaled. The sound was deep and tired. Claire remained still until his eye disappeared. By dawn, she had returned to the lower stalls and finished her work before Harlan arrived. He inspected the clean troughs, the fresh bedding, and the polished tack hooks with visible disappointment, as though hoping to find a reason to dismiss her. "The upper stall was quiet last night," he said. Claire continued folding a blanket. "Was it?" Harlan studied her. "Did you go near him?" "I did not enter the stall." The answer was true, though she felt the weight of what she had not said. Harlan stepped closer. "Do not mistake silence for trust. That horse has broken stronger people than you." Claire placed the blanket on the shelf. "Then perhaps strength is not what he needs." His face hardened. Before he could reply, a heavy step sounded on the ramp. A royal guard appeared at the doorway, silver wolf insignia bright against his dark coat. "Stable Master Harlan," he said. "His Majesty wants to know why Vesper stopped fighting for nearly an hour last night." Harlan's confidence faltered. Claire kept her hands still at her sides. Above them, Vesper gave one quiet breath at the sound of her voice. Harlan recovered quickly. By the time the guard led him toward the upper courtyard, His shoulders had squared and his voice had regained its authority. Claire followed at a distance with a folded blanket in her arms, unnoticed until the guard opened the gate to Vesper's stall. Rowan stood beyond the barrier with 2 officers and Lady Marin, the morning light cutting across his black coat. "You said the horse responded to a revised handling method," Rowan told Harlan. "Explain it." Harlan bowed. "A quieter approach, Your Majesty. Less pressure on the reins. More time between commands." Claire felt the blanket grow heavier in her hands. Every word belonged to what she had done, yet none of it carried her name. Rowan looked toward Vesper. "Show me." Harlan signaled to a handler, who entered with a lead rope and a soft training pole. The moment the rope passed through the gate, Vesper's head rose. His muscles tightened beneath the dark coat. Harlan began speaking in a low voice, copying the calm tone Claire had used, but his words came too fast, each one shaped like an order. Vesper backed away. The chain beneath the tack scraped. His breathing sharpened. "Easy," Harlan said louder now. "Stand." The stallion struck the floor and pulled against the restraint. The handler retreated at once. Rowan's expression did not change, but the space around him seemed to harden. "That is your revised method?" Harlan glanced toward Claire. The movement lasted less than a second, but Rowan followed it. His gaze settled on her where she stood near the wall. "Who is she?" Lady Marin answered before Claire could. "A laundry servant reassigned for insolence." "Her name," Rowan said. "Claire Bennett." Marin's mouth tightened around the words. Rowan looked back at Harlan. "Why did you look at Claire Bennett?" Harlan folded his hands behind his back. "She was present below, Your Majesty. Nothing more." From inside the stall came a restless shift. Claire heard the metal catch again. Without thinking, she spoke. "Please stop pulling the left strap." Every face turned toward her. Harlan's eyes flashed a warning, but Rowan raised one hand before he could answer. "Why?" Claire swallowed. The king's attention felt heavier than the bucket she had carried all morning. "Because the buckle is pressing into him when he moves. He is not resisting the rope. He is trying to escape the pain." Rowan stepped closer to the gate, studying the leather beneath Vesper's flank. Harlan moved quickly to block the angle. The tack was inspected after the campaign. "Then remove it," Rowan said. Silence followed. Harlan forced a smile. "With respect, the stallion will not allow anyone near enough." Vesper turned his head toward the wall where Claire stood. One ear angled in her direction. Rowan saw it. His eyes moved from the horse to Claire, slower this time. "Were you the one speaking to him last night?" Claire could have protected herself with silence. Instead, she met the king's gaze. "Yes, Your Majesty." Rowan studied her for a long moment, then looked at the stallion that had rejected every command that morning. "Tonight," he said, "I want to see exactly what happens when he hears her voice." By dusk, the upper stable had been cleared of everyone except Rowan, Harlan, 2 guards, and Claire. Lanterns burned low along the stone walls, leaving Vesper in a pool of amber light. Claire stood outside the stall with her hands empty. Harlan had offered her a lead rope, but she had refused it. Rowan noticed. "You intend to approach without equipment?" he asked. "I do not intend to approach at all," Claire said. "Not yet." Harlan gave a quiet scoff. "The king did not come here to watch you stand in a hallway." Claire kept her eyes on Vesper. "Then he should watch the horse." The words slipped out before caution could soften them. One guard shifted, but Rowan only folded his arms. "Continue." Claire moved 3 feet closer to the wall and lowered herself onto a wooden step. Vesper paced once, the old tack shifting across his back. She waited until his ears turned toward her, then began speaking in the same low rhythm she had used the night before. She told him where she was standing. She told him no one would enter. She told him the lantern would stay where it was. The stallion slowed. Harlan's expression tightened. Rowan did not look away. After several minutes, Vesper stopped beside the partition. Claire lifted one hand, palm open, but kept it outside the bars. His muzzle appeared through the gap and hovered inches from her fingers. He did not touch her. Still, the distance between them became a choice instead of a barrier. Then Harlan shifted his weight. A metal hook at his belt struck the gate. Vesper recoiled. The buckle dragged beneath the leather, and the stallion twisted sharply toward his left side. Claire saw it clearly now. Not only rubbed skin. A narrow piece of broken metal had folded inward beneath the strap, biting deeper each time he turned. "There," she said. Rowan stepped toward the stall. "Where?" Claire pointed. Under the rear buckle. The edge is bent. Harlan moved between them. Your Majesty, she is guessing from shadows. Remove the tack, Rowan said. Harlan did not move. Now. The stable master unlocked the outer panel, but Vesper surged backward before he could enter. Rowan reached for the latch himself. Claire stood. Please do not. The king turned to her, and, for the first time, his control looked less like strength than a door held shut. That horse carried me through 3 years of war. His voice remained quiet. I will not leave metal cutting into him. Then let him choose who comes near. Rowan's gaze sharpened. And you believe he will choose you? Claire looked through the bars. Vesper's dark eye was fixed on her. I believe he has been trying to tell all of you no. Silence settled over the stable. Rowan stepped back from the latch. It was a small movement, but it changed the room. The Alpha King had yielded space to an Omega servant. Claire faced the stall again and spoke until Vesper returned to the partition. This time, when she raised her hand, his muzzle touched her palm. Warm breath crossed her skin. Harlan stared. Rowan's face revealed nothing, yet his hand slowly lowered from the gate. Then Claire felt moisture against her wrist. She looked down. A thin red stain marked the edge of Vesper's leather. Rowan saw it too. At sunrise, he said, the tack comes off. Harlan opened his mouth, but Rowan's next words ended the matter. Claire Bennett will be present, and no one will touch that horse unless she says he is ready. At sunrise, frost silvered the stable roof, and every breath hung pale in the air. Claire stood outside Vesper's stall, while Rowan dismissed everyone who did not need to be there. Harlan remained with one groom, his jaw set beneath a mask of obedience. A low table held clean cloth, warm water, and a set of leather-cutting shears. No ropes, no poles, no raised voices. Claire waited until Vesper turned one ear toward her. We are going to remove what hurts, she said. No one will move until you are ready. The stallion shifted, then looked toward the open panel. Rowan stood 6 feet behind Claire, far enough not to crowd him. Harlan watched the king instead of the horse. That alone made Claire uneasy. She spoke for several minutes before Vesper stepped closer. His muzzle brushed her palm through the bars, and only then did she nod. The groom opened the side latch. Harlan reached for the rear strap. Vesper's muscles tightened at once. Stop, Claire said. Harlan froze. You told us to. Remove it. Not from that side. She moved along the wall, keeping her voice steady. Let him see your hands. Harlan obeyed, but too quickly. The buckle shifted beneath the leather. Vesper drew back. Rowan's expression hardened. Follow her pace. Harlan breathed through his nose and waited. Claire guided him one movement at a time. Lift the strap. Hold it still. Step away. The old tack loosened by inches until the bent metal edge became visible. It had cut through the inner lining and pressed into the skin beneath. Rowan stared at it. How long? He asked. Harlan answered without looking up. It must have happened during transport. Claire saw the lie before she understood why. Fresh padding had been stitched over the damaged area, too clean to belong to campaign gear. Someone had noticed and covered it instead of repairing it. She reached toward the lining, then stopped herself. May I? She asked Rowan. He gave one nod. Claire lifted the padding and found dark polish rubbed along the metal, meant to hide the bend at a glance. Rowan's gaze moved to Harlan. Who altered this? I do not know, Your Majesty. Harlan's voice remained controlled, but his hand closed around the shears too tightly. Vesper shifted again, and Claire returned her attention to him. The questions can wait, she said. Rowan looked at her sharply. No servant interrupted an Alpha King. Yet after a moment, he stepped back. Remove it. They worked until the tack slid free and Vesper stood without iron against his side for the first time since returning from war. His breathing slowed, but when Claire moved toward the open stall, Rowan caught the door before she could enter. You have proven your judgment, he said quietly. You have not proven that he cannot panic. Claire looked past him at Vesper. Trust does not mean danger disappears. Then you understand why I am ordering you to remain outside. She heard concern beneath the command, but it was still a command. Rowan turned to the guards. No one enters without Claire's approval. Harlan is relieved of handling duties until I know who concealed that buckle. Power shifted through the stable in silence. Harlan was no longer in control. Claire was no longer invisible. But as Rowan walked away carrying the damaged tack himself, Claire noticed Harlan watching her from the far end of the aisle, not with anger, but with calculation. For the next 2 days, Claire worked under a rule that made every choice visible. She could speak to Vesper, prepare his water, and decide who approached the stall, but she could not cross the threshold. Rowan's order protected her, yet it also placed the weight of each decision on her shoulders. By the second evening, Vesper no longer paced when she entered the aisle. He stood near the partition, his dark head lowered just enough to watch her through the boards. Claire placed a bucket of warm water beside the gate and sat on an overturned crate. "You are healing," she told him. "That does not mean you have forgotten." His ear turned toward her. She heard footsteps behind the stable wall and expected a guard. Instead, Rowan appeared alone, without his coat of state or silver insignia. In a plain black shirt, he looked less like a ruler and more like a tired man who had not slept. Claire rose. "Your Majesty." "Stay seated." He stopped several feet from the stall. Vesper lifted his head, but did not retreat. Rowan noticed. "He tolerates me now. He is measuring whether you will make demands." "And what does he measure from you?" Claire looked at the horse. "Whether I keep my word." Rowan's gaze remained on Vesper. "He once carried me through cannon smoke for 6 miles after every other horse turned back." The memory changed his voice, stripping away its command. "When we returned, he would not let me touch him." Claire heard the question beneath the statement. What happened before that? Rowan's jaw tightened. The final night of the campaign was confused. Bells, shouting, metal striking stone. Vesper broke formation when a supply wagon overturned. He paused. "Harlan," said the horse, panicked. Vesper shifted at the sound of Harlan's name. Not violently. One step backward. Claire noticed Rowan notice it. "Was Harlan with him?" she asked. "He supervised the transport home." The answer opened a door, but did not show what waited beyond it. Claire lowered her voice. "Vesper is not afraid of every man. He is afraid of certain sounds, certain movements, and perhaps certain people." Rowan looked toward the empty aisle. "You believe Harlan concealed more than the buckle." "I believe Vesper reacts before anyone explains why." Rowan studied her for a long moment. "That is not proof." "No." Claire met his eyes. "But it is a reason not to ignore him again." A soft scrape came from inside the stall. Vesper stepped closer to the bars. Claire did not move. Rowan slowly extended one open hand, stopping well outside the horse's reach. Vesper watched him, then turned his muzzle toward Claire instead. Rowan lowered his hand without resentment. "Tomorrow the Royal Council will inspect him," he said. Claire's stomach tightened. "Why?" "They question whether a king who cannot control his own warhorse can control a kingdom." "Then cancel it." Rowan's expression closed. "I cannot." "You can. You choose not to." The words hung between them. Rowan did not rebuke her, but the silence grew colder. At last he said, "The inspection will proceed at noon. You will be present." He turned to leave, then stopped. Harlan requested permission to prepare Vesper for display. Claire stood so quickly the crate scraped the floor. "Do not let him near the stall." Rowan glanced back. "I denied him." Relief came too soon. From the far end of the aisle, a groom entered carrying a sealed bottle and a folded cloth marked with Harlan's stable stamp. Vesper recoiled before the bottle was even opened. Claire crossed the aisle before the groom reached the stall. "Set it down." The young man stopped, startled by the authority in her voice. Rowan moved beside her and took the sealed bottle from his hands. The label had been scraped away, but a bitter herbal smell escaped around the cork. Vesper backed into the far corner, his nostrils wide. "Who gave you this?" Rowan asked. The groom glanced toward the stable doors. "Master Harlan, Your Majesty." He said it would steady the horse for the council. Rowan broke the wax seal and poured a few drops onto the folded cloth. The liquid left a dark stain and released a sharper scent beneath the herbs, something Claire recognized from the palace laundry, where hunters sometimes sent blankets soaked with calming tonic. "There are 2 mixtures in it," she said. "One meant to dull him, and one meant to keep him standing." Rowan's eyes hardened. "How do you know?" "The calming tonic smells like bitterroot. The other has winter pepper. It raises the pulse." The groom went pale. "I did not know." Claire believed him. His hands were trembling too badly for deception. Rowan ordered a guard to find Harlan, but the man had already left the palace grounds. That was the reveal Rowan could no longer dismiss. The bent buckle had not been neglect. The hidden padding had not been carelessness. Harlan had been managing Vesper's fear, pain, and appearance for the sake of public control. Yet the truth did not free them from the inspection. At 11:30, 3 council carriages entered the royal courtyard. Rowan stood at the stable doors while officials gathered under the covered gallery, their voices quiet but watchful. "Cancel it now," Claire said. "They will call it weakness," Rowan answered. "Let them." His gaze shifted toward the council seal on the nearest carriage. A king cannot govern by avoiding every test placed before him. This is not your test. It is his. Rowan looked through the bars at Vesper. The stallion had grown restless since the carriages arrived, reacting to wheels, metal clasps, and unfamiliar voices. Claire saw the decision forming in the king before he spoke. "We will bring him into the inner yard for 5 minutes. No rider. No crowd within 30 feet. You will stay at his left side." Claire felt cold settle beneath her ribs. He is not ready. Neither is the council willing to wait. The wrong choice was made quietly, which made it no less dangerous. Rowan ordered the side gate opened. Claire walked beside Vesper as 2 handlers guided him into the covered passage. For the first 20 feet, he followed her voice. Then a council guard dropped a ceremonial chain against the stone. The sound rang through the passage. Vesper stopped. His body went rigid. Claire turned toward him at once. "Stay with me." Behind them, another gate closed with a metallic crash. Vesper pulled back, not toward Claire, but away from the sound. One handler tightened the lead rope. The other raised his hand to signal for help. "Release him," Claire said. Neither man obeyed. Rowan repeated the order, but a second too late. Vesper tore the rope free and surged into the inner yard, where polished stone, council banners, and frightened horses boxed him in from every side. Officials scattered behind the gallery rail. Guards lowered the outer gates. Vesper wheeled beneath the open sky, breathing hard, searching for an exit that no longer existed. Claire reached the yard entrance, but Rowan caught her arm before she could cross it. Not yet. Across the courtyard, one of the councilmen pointed toward Vesper and demanded the archers be called. Rowan released Claire and raised his hand to stop the order, but the damage had already changed everything. The council no longer saw a wounded animal. They saw proof that the king had lost control. Vesper struck the stone once, then turned toward the only voice he had learned to trust. Claire heard the councilman's order before the archers appeared on the gallery above. "Hold your positions," Rowan commanded. His voice carried across the inner yard, stopping the guards before they could raise their bows. Vesper stood near the fountain, trapped between the closed gates and the line of council horses. His sides rose and fell too quickly. Every banner snapping in the wind made his head jerk toward a new threat. Claire stepped forward. Rowan moved in front of her. "You said he was not ready. I should have listened." "Then listen now." She looked past him at Vesper. "Open the east gate." One councilman protested from behind the rail. "Your Majesty, that animal cannot be released into the palace grounds." Rowan did not turn. "Open it." The gatekeeper hesitated, staring at the restless stallion. Claire understood why. The east passage was narrow, lined with iron lantern hooks. If Vesper entered it in panic, the confined space would magnify every sound. "No," she said. Rowan looked at her. "You asked for the gate. I thought he needed an exit. He is not looking at the gates." Vesper's dark eyes remained fixed on Claire. That changed. Her goal. Escape was not what he was seeking. He was searching for the one thing in the yard that had never forced him forward. Claire removed her gray shawl and handed it to Rowan. Without the fabric brushing her arms, she could move without adding another unfamiliar sound. "Tell everyone to stop speaking." Rowan faced the courtyard. Silence. The councilman's objections died beneath the command. Hooves shifted beneath the gallery, but no human voice answered. Claire entered the yard. The cold stone pressed through the soles of her worn shoes. Vesper raised his head as she crossed the first 10 feet. His front hoof scraped once. Claire stopped immediately. "I am here," she said, keeping her voice low. "No ropes. No hands. No one is taking you anywhere." A guard near the west wall adjusted his shield. The metal edge touched stone. Vesper spun toward the sound. Claire felt the air leave her lungs, but she did not retreat. Rowan pointed to the guard, who set the shield down and stepped away. The king was no longer directing the horse. He was clearing the world around Claire's voice. She moved another step. Vesper shifted backward. "That is enough," Rowan said quietly. Claire glanced at him. His face held no command now, only concern. "If I stop while he is asking me to stay, he will learn that fear makes everyone leave." She turned back before Rowan could answer. Vesper's ears moved toward her, then away, torn between the yard and the memory of metal. Claire spoke about the lower stable, the warm bucket, and the quiet space behind the wall. Not to distract him, but to return him to something known. His breathing slowed by a fraction. Then Lady Marin hurried into the gallery, clutching a message. "Your Majesty, Harlan has been found at the south gate." Rowan's attention shifted for 1 second. The council guards moved with him, and the sudden rustle of armor rolled across the yard. Vesper recoiled, then came forward 3 fast steps. Claire stood alone in his path. Rowan called her name, but she lifted one hand without looking back. "Do not move." Vesper stopped less than 12 feet away. His breath reached her in warm bursts. Claire could see the white rim of fear around his eyes. She lowered her raised hand, opened her palm, and made the decision no rank or command could make for her. She stepped closer. Claire took 1 step, then another, letting Vesper decide whether the distance would close. The courtyard had gone so quiet that she could hear the banners pulling against their ropes and the uneven rhythm of his breath. Behind her, Rowan held every guard, councilman, and servant in place with 1 raised hand. Harlan had been found. The concealed buckle had been exposed. The bottle had revealed deliberate interference. None of it mattered unless Vesper chose trust now. Claire stopped 8 feet from him. His head lifted, dark mane trembling in the wind. "You know my voice," she said. "You know I will not force you." Vesper shifted his weight. 1 hoof touched the stone, then settled again. Claire saw his attention flick toward the iron lantern hooks along the passage, toward the closed gates, toward the armor surrounding the yard. Too many memories lived inside those sounds. She could not erase them. She could only give him one thing stronger to follow. "Look at me." His ears turned forward. Claire opened her hand. "No straps. No chains. No one will move you." Rowan lowered his hand slightly, signaling the guards to set down anything metal they carried. Shields touched the ground without a clang. Swords remained sheathed. Even the council horses quieted beneath their handlers. For the first time, the king was not asking Vesper to obey him. He was making room for Claire to be heard. She stepped within 6 feet. Vesper's breath warmed her face. His body remained taut, but he did not retreat. Claire noticed the healed edge beneath his left side, the place where pain had taught him to expect betrayal. "You were right to say no," she whispered. "They should have listened sooner." The stallion lowered his head by an inch. Claire raised her palm toward his muzzle, not touching, not reaching farther than he allowed. Behind her, Lady Marin drew a sharp breath. Harlan was brought to the gallery under guard, his face pale when he saw Vesper standing before Claire without rope or restraint. Rowan did not look at him. Every unanswered question had narrowed to this single moment. Would the horse choose fear, or the voice that had never demanded surrender? Vesper moved forward. His muzzle hovered over Claire's hand, then settled against her palm. Warmth spread across her skin. She did not smile. She did not move. "That is enough," Rowan said softly, but Claire heard the concern in his voice, not an order. Vesper exhaled. The sound rolled through the courtyard, deep and long, as if he had been holding it since the war. Then his head lowered past Claire's shoulder. One front leg bent. A murmur rose from the gallery and died beneath Rowan's stare. Vesper folded the second leg and lowered himself onto the stone before her. The royal warhorse, feared by soldiers and judged by the council, knelt with his forehead beneath Claire's open hand. She touched him at last, resting her palm between his eyes. Rowan stood motionless behind her. The councilman stared. Harlan looked away. Claire felt Vesper's breathing steady beneath her fingers, and she understood that the entire court had just witnessed what force had failed to earn. Trust had been offered, not taken. Rowan crossed the yard slowly and stopped beside her, leaving enough space for Vesper to choose again. "Claire," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. "Tell me what he needs." "He needs the court to stop treating fear as disobedience," Claire said. Her hand remained between Vesper's eyes while the stallion stayed folded before her, calm only because no one had demanded the next movement. Rowan looked toward the council gallery. Every official who had questioned his authority was watching now. He could have claimed the moment as proof of royal control. Claire saw the temptation pass across his face, subtle as a shadow beneath winter light. Instead, he turned back to her. "And what do you need?" The question unsettled her more than any command. For years, People had told Claire where to stand, when to lower her eyes, and how little space she deserved. Now the Alpha King was waiting for an answer in front of the entire court. She could have asked for safety. She could have asked to return to the laundry, where expectations were small and invisibility was familiar. Vesper breathed beneath her palm, trusting her not to abandon the truth after earning the right to speak it. Claire straightened. "I need the stall doors opened," she said. "Not the outer gates. The path back to the lower stable. No ropes, no handlers, and no one behind him." A councilman stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the inspection is incomplete." Rowan faced him. "The inspection ended when you mistook panic for proof. The council must determine whether the animal remains fit for royal service. He is not an object under review." Rowan's voice stayed level, but the words carried farther than a shout. "He is the horse who carried your king home." The gallery fell silent. Claire felt something shift in Rowan then. He was no longer defending his image. He was defending what he had failed to understand. "Open the passage," he ordered. The guards moved immediately, lifting the wooden barriers and pulling the inner gate wide. Rowan removed his ceremonial belt and set it on the stone, taking away the soft clink of metal. Then he stepped back beside the fountain. He did not call Vesper. He did not reach for the reins lying near the gate. He gave the horse a choice. Claire lowered her hand. "You can stand when you are ready." Vesper remained still for several breaths. Then he rose, slow and steady, keeping his head near her shoulder. Claire turned toward the passage. She walked one step. Vesper followed. No one touched him. At the gallery, Harlan shifted as though he meant to speak. Rowan stopped him with a glance. "You concealed the damaged buckle, ordered an unapproved mixture, and placed appearance above safety." Harlan lowered his head. "I acted to preserve confidence in the crown." Rowan looked toward Claire and Vesper moving together across the yard. "No, you acted because force was easier than listening." He ordered Harlan removed from royal service pending formal judgment, then faced Lady Marin. Claire Bennett was punished for seeing what this court ignored. Her reassignment is ended. Claire stopped before the passage. "No, Your Majesty." A murmur traveled through the gallery. Rowan's expression tightened, not with anger, but surprise. Claire turned to face him while Vesper waited beside her. "Do not send me back because the court is embarrassed. I will not trade one assigned place for another." Her heart pounded, but her voice did not fail. "Let me choose." Rowan crossed the distance slowly and stopped several feet away. "Then choose." Claire looked at the lower stable doors, at the place meant to reduce her, and understood it no longer held that power. "I choose to stay with Vesper until he is well. I choose who enters his stall. I choose how he is handled." Rowan inclined his head before her, not deeply, but enough for every noble to see. "Granted." Claire took another step, and Vesper followed her into the passage. This time, when Rowan came after them, he waited until Claire looked back and nodded. By the following morning, Rowan had turned Claire's choice into law. The order was posted at every stable entrance. No animal in royal service would be handled with concealed medication, pain-inducing equipment, or forced restraint without written approval from the chief healer and the person responsible for its care. Claire's name appeared beneath the final line as Vesper's appointed keeper. The title did not erase what had happened. Several grooms avoided her eyes. Lady Marin spoke to her with formal politeness sharpened by resentment. 2 councilmen submitted complaints claiming Rowan had allowed an Omega servant to undermine royal authority. Rowan read each complaint at breakfast, signed his response, and returned them unopened to debate. "Authority that cannot survive the truth is already weak," he told the clerk. Claire heard about it only because the clerk came to the lower stable seeking her signature on the new care records. She studied the page before signing. The stable master used to approve everything himself. "Not anymore," the clerk said. His Majesty divided the authority. No single person can hide a decision again. That consequence mattered more than Harlan's removal. It meant the next frightened horse would not need a miracle or a servant willing to risk punishment before someone listened. Claire spent the day reorganizing Vesper's stall. She ordered the iron ring removed from the wall, replaced the narrow water bucket with a broad wooden trough, and marked a quiet path through the stable where carts and chains would no longer pass. Some workers resisted until Rowan arrived carrying the damaged buckle in a plain evidence box. He set it on the work table where everyone could see it. "This is what silence protected," he said. From today forward, anyone who reports pain will be heard before rank is considered. Lady Maren stood near the doorway. Your Majesty, the household requires order. Servants cannot challenge every instruction. Claire waited for Rowan to answer, but he looked at her instead. The choice was deliberate. He was not speaking for her this time. Claire faced Maren. Questions are not rebellion when the cost of obedience is harm. I did not ask to command the household. I asked you to look before deciding I was wrong. Maren's expression did not soften. And if your judgment fails? Then I answer for it openly. Claire placed the new care ledger on the table. The same standard should apply to everyone. Rowan signed the first page beneath her name. It will. That evening, Vesper allowed the stall door to remain open for 10 minutes. He did not leave. He stood at the threshold, watching the aisle while Claire brushed dust from his neck with slow strokes. Rowan waited outside, exactly where she had asked him to stand. After several minutes, Vesper extended his muzzle toward the king, then withdrew. Rowan did not follow. Is that progress? He asked. It is a question, Claire said. He wants to know whether you will respect the answer. Rowan kept his hands at his sides. Then my answer is yes. Vesper looked at him again, longer this time. Claire stepped away from the horse and opened space beside her. Rowan did not enter until she nodded. He crossed the threshold without insignia, weapons, or command, carrying only a sliced apple in his palm. Vesper smelled it, but did not take it. Rowan waited. The apple remained between them, an offer without pressure. At last, the stallion touched it with his lips. Rowan's breath caught, but he stayed still. Claire watched the king accept. One small act of trust without trying to turn it into possession, and knew the change in him had become real because no audience was there to reward it. 3 weeks later, the royal courtyard opened again beneath a clear winter sky. The same council gallery stood above the polished stone, but no barriers narrowed the yard, no handlers waited with ropes, and no iron chain hung from Vesper's tack. The stallion entered beside Claire at a walk, his dark coat bright in the morning light. She wore a simple navy dress beneath a wool cloak, practical enough for the stable and formal enough for the court. At her shoulder rested the silver badge of royal keeper, an office Rowan had created with duties written clearly enough that no future housekeeper could turn it into an empty title. The council had returned to witness the new stable charter. Some faces remained doubtful. Lady Maren stood among the household staff, straight-backed and silent. Harlan's place near the king was empty. Claire did not search for approval in any of them. Vesper's pace told her everything she needed to know. He crossed the yard without flinching when carriage wheels rolled beyond the east wall. When a buckle clicked in the gallery, one ear turned toward the sound, then returned to Claire. He remembered, but memory no longer commanded every step. Rowan waited near the fountain without ceremonial armor. He wore the black coat Claire remembered from the morning she had first seen him, but his hands were empty. He did not approach until Vesper stopped. May I? He asked. The question carried across the quiet yard. Claire looked at the stallion. Vesper watched Rowan, then lowered his head by a small degree. You may stand beside us, Claire said. Rowan crossed the remaining distance and took his place at her right, leaving space between himself and Vesper. The council clerk read the charter aloud. It required open records, independent inspections, and immediate review whenever any servant reported pain, fear, or unsafe equipment. Rank could no longer silence observation. No single official could approve medication, restraint, and public display alone. When the reading ended, the clerk offered Rowan the royal pen. Rowan took it, then handed it to Claire first. A murmur moved through the gallery. You found the failure, he said. You should sign the correction. Claire placed her name beneath the charter. Rowan signed after her. Lady Maren approached when the clerk stepped away. Her expression remained reserved, but she carried the wooden bucket Claire had used on her first day below. It had been sanded smooth and fitted with a new handle. This was left in the lower stable, Maren said. I thought it should be returned. Claire accepted it. No apology came, and she did not pretend one had. Consequences had changed the household more honestly than sudden affection ever could. Thank you, Claire said. Maren inclined her head and returned to the staff. Rowan looked at the bucket, then at Claire. Do you regret being sent there? I regret why it happened. She rested one hand on Vesper's neck. Not where it led. At the far side of the courtyard, a young groom reached for the stable gate before Vesper had fully turned. Claire heard the latch lift. The old warning rose from memory in Harlan's voice. Do not open that gate. Before anyone could speak, the groom stopped himself and looked toward Claire. Is he ready? He asked. Claire studied Vesper's ears, his breathing, and the easy weight of his stance. Then she nodded. Open it. The gate swung wide. Vesper did not bolt. He waited for Claire to walk first, then followed by choice. Rowan joined them only after she glanced back. Once, she had been sent below because no one wanted to hear her. Now the stable doors opened when she spoke. The king listened before he moved, and the warhorse beside her no longer needed to kneel to prove whom he trusted.